that is another thing that I never intended to do. So Johnny Cashmere is the one who proposed the idea. They were going to do the Backseat Boyz and CZW. And slowly I started to enjoy it. Disheveled deathmatch manager, and I liked having the bloody jacket. If Nick never asked for me to be his manager, I probably wouldn't be here. He came up to me, he says, Dewey, anywhere I am and you're at, you're on with me. One of the biggest crowds I think we had there it was electric there. He wanted to put you with Drew Gulak. Mm-hmm. Come out there and you'll be the turncoat. Collected so much blood on this jacket. I hope I never, caught for a murder investigation or anything.
Call it how I see it, straight talk, no disguise. So the slang dripping, got the truth in my eyes. Might like gavel, every word, lay it down. Coach C in the booth, turn the game all around. Yeah, it's Coach C, he the best for business. It's Coach C, he the best for business. Yeah, I'm sharp as attack when I call the play-by-play. Every dog got his day, and I make the crowd stay. It's every week we go live on a Wednesday. Dressing so sharp, that's the reason why your friends stay. The youngest in the game to do it, best for business. Coach C is the truth, and everybody gonna witness. Love entertainment, you swear it's your destiny. Link with Coach C, we can talk about your legacy. It's Coach C, he the best for business. It's Coach C, he the best for business.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Another episode of Best for Business. This one's over a year in the making. I'm so excited for this one. Dewey Donovan, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I hope I don't disappoint with this. Like I said, I've always felt like I've never been interesting, but I hope I have stuff to enlighten you with here.
You've done a lot in wrestling. Even recently, I interviewed the Messiah, and he talks so highly of you. Johnny Cashmere has, so I'm excited for this to learn more about you. But seriously, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, no problem.
So you've accomplished a lot in pro wrestling, but originally, what was it about wrestling that made Dewey Donovan want to get involved in it at first?
I had no aspirations at first. I was born, in the 70s, so I mean, early 80s. I watched, WWE, at the time. You watched Saturday morning wrestling and all that shit. I became a big fan of ECW, the original ECW. I wound up going every 3 weeks to the arena to watch the shows. I was a out of shape, skinny kid. I didn't. You don't expect to get involved in wrestling, so I never tried to. It just turned out by chance. I started hanging out at the hotels where the wrestlers went after the shows, Travel Lodge there in Philadelphia. You hang out, have drinks with the wrestlers. It seemed cool. A buddy of mine, he was training to become a wrestler. He bounced around to various wrestling schools. I don't know where. I know he worked with like Mike Sharp and Nova and stuff like them. And he went to some wrestling school in Fairless Hills, and he needed a ride there. He says, "Oh, yeah, can you drive me to the wrestling school?" I said, "Oh, wow, that sounds cool. Get to watch people doing everything in there." So I went there, and I sat around there for a while until that was Moose Moretti and Rocco Murder, the Chain Gang. They had a small school in Fairless Hills.
Wow.
And I sat around there, and eventually he says, you need a referee for one of the shows. So I said, all right. And I had zero training, as a referee. I just went in there and I did what I watch people do on TV.
Yeah.
And I started a gimmick from that. I called myself the discount referee.
Wow.
I did not know where to buy a referee shirt. He says, "Come on, dude." They weren't going to pay me for the show. They were just like, "Yeah, you want to do a referee show?" So I look online. And I was like, or no, it wasn't no online to really look for these things. I was going to like Foot Locker and shit, or whatever, and then they're like, "Oh, it's like $40 some for a referee shirt." I ain't buying a referee shirt for this, So I took a magic marker and plain t-shirt, and I really exaggerated how bad it looked because they're like, I wanted to make it look like it was just cheesy.
Yeah.
I called myself the discount referee. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's where that was my start doing wrestling stuff.
Is there a lesson or something that stands out learning from Moose originally? Because I remember when you talked with the GCW Deathmatch Hall of Fame originally, you mentioned his name talked highly. Is there a lesson or something that sticks out from him?
not really.
Okay.
The chain gang, they were hardcore brawlers. That was
Okay.
the style that was popular after during ECW. I mean, they were hometown favorites, and they're in Fairless Hills. They were two real big guys. The whole deal, the trash cans with the weapons to the ring, hit, bleed, bleed. And there's nothing wrong with that, but
Yeah.
that was their style. They had their own wrestling school. They didn't really teach the basics of wrestling there.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to him because I would not have had the confidence to go to a wrestling school ever and get involved. I just didn't think that was a realistic thing.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm grateful to him because he opened the door. And this was around a time where I decided, like I couldn't look at myself in the mirror anymore. It's like I want to start getting in shape. So for my own reasons, I was working out, trying to get in shape. Um, and at the same time, here's this guy who's willing to put me in the wrestling ring. And then eventually, probably because he wanted more money, he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to train you to be a wrestler too."
Yeah.
And I said, "I can't do that," but I did. I
Yeah.
was like about like 165. I was starting to get in shape. That was the point where a lot of smaller guys on the indies were starting to do shows and stuff. So I started there. I
Hmm.
didn't learn a whole lot there. So I didn't really. I did my first match. He did shows with Tony Stallone. He
Wow.
and they did. It was the typical indie show. You book an old legend like Jimmy Snooker, King Kong Bundy, and then you have a bunch of the local guys and a bunch of new guys. And
Yeah.
at that time, I'd say I was no more than a backyard wrestler.
Okay.
I didn't know. He taught us how to bump and how to stuff like that, running ropes. But there was a lot of, I worked with other students there on this show. I didn't know what I was doing. The very first spot was a tag match, and we did a thing. We were okay. We're gonna do a couple drop kicks, arm drag, and blah blah blah. And I remember I ran, and the guy who I was wrestling hooked my right arm instead of my left arm, which that's very basic wrestling stuff,
Yeah.
but we just didn't know. That's like the type, like they didn't teach us that type of stuff. Um, so he hooked me with the right arm. I kind of left with the left way, and I just impaled myself on my head and neck and knocked myself unconscious,
Wow.
legit from an arm. Thank God, VHS doesn't really exist anymore. I'm sure that tape isn't around anymore.
Yeah.
But it was very embarrassing. I got up and I don't remember the match, but I did the whole match the way it was supposed to go. But yeah, that's for that reason. Like the wrestling school, it didn't help me too much in that respect. But I have a great deal of appreciation for Moose because if he
Yeah.
hadn't pushed me to go in there, I never would have.
Oh, wow.
And then from there, that's when I moved on to CZW after that, and I started training at their wrestling school.
Originally, is there a match? I know it was a short period, but is there a match that you got the referee that stands out that you were part of?
Not 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 really.
Okay.
I was working, some places, and it was nice to work with guys like Cronus,
Yeah.
Big Dick Dudley. Like I'm just this guys I watched as a fan. So when I got to do shows like that, that was always great. And everything in CZW I did that was fun. That was only a few months that I really did the referee thing there at CZW.
How does your introduction originally for CZW happen?
CZW, my first exposure, there was an independent show in Philadelphia. It was a collection of all the different local feds in the area. I think it
Hmm.
was called Breaking the Barrier.
Okay.
Uh, and CZW was incorporated on that. CZW had only been around for a few months at the time. Nick Gage and Justice Payne had a show match on there. And I mean, they were very young, very green. They probably didn't follow the psychology that the wrestlers, should have followed, but they had this just passion. You could
Hmm.
see it, the way that the crispness of every move. They had a hunger to steal the show, and it blew me away. To me, it stole the show. I'm sure some of the vets there would disagree, but I really was blown away by it. Friend of mine, he found out where they were running. They were running in Mantua, and so we went down there to check out a show. and I got hooked instantly. It was such a different vibe. It was like this underground vibe. There was like this warehouse in the middle of nowhere, secluded in the trees. We were standing in line, and up on the roof of the building before the show started, I think it was Lobo and TCK. They start doing a spot up there, and one of them bumps off of the roof like onto a truck that was down below. And we're like, holy shit, this is
Yeah.
crazy. And you walked in there, it was dark. There was neon lighting around the entranceway. There was a death metal band playing. It was just this underground vibe.
Hmm.
The mid card, lower card was kind of like, you know, so, but once the main eventers went Gage, Justice Pain, Lobo, Rick Blade, Zandig, and all them, when they started coming out, I think the first thing that just blew my mind was there was a team called the Kingpins. They did a bowling gimmick, and they picked up this young kid, and he just ran full speed and crashed through a drywall.
Wow.
And Zandig, he was in construction, so he would just put new walls up constantly, and people would just go run through them. But yeah, the hardcore aspect obviously was their bread and butter,
Hmm.
and I got hooked instantly. It filled a void. ECW left a void. Uh, that was where all the hardcore was. At some point when they started going national, that's when they started toning things down. They started toning things down. They started spending less time at the arena that they used to. It started
Hmm.
going from every 3 weeks to like every month to a month and a half. Uh, National TV. They weren't. It wasn't. You lost its feel to it.
Yeah.
And CZW, the people who had that hole in them that needed that filled, they filled that. That was.
Wow. I know in your wrestling career, at least, I'm pretty sure you have Robbie Illuminati's. I think it's his first match. But is there any match? I know it was a brief time wrestling that stands out for CCW.
I only had about 5 matches
Okay, one of them was
before.
Robbie's first match. I remember.
Yeah, before I got hurt. Robbie's match, that was at New Millennium Wrestling for Ace
Okay,
Robinson. I'll credit, that was probably one of my best matches out.
nice.
I can't really say I've only had 5 matches.
Yeah.
But Robbie, I didn't know anything. Like Zandig taught me the basics. I was there, and they trained me the right way to do everything. As far as putting all that together, I was so far from that.
Okay.
I credit Robbie. He pretty much called that entire match, and pretty much everybody did from that point. Like my very first match was against a kid named Johnny Blaze, um, and at that point, we had learned spots in the wrestling school, and we just repeated those spots in the ring. It wasn't like I learned a lot more managing from listening to people call over matches than I ever did when I was actively wrestling. Because, like I said, it was only 5 matches. I wrestled 2 matches against Robbie. I did a couple against this Johnny Blaze, and then I got hurt wrestling Nick Burke
Okay.
while I was a manager. And it wasn't a serious injury, I don't think.
Yeah.
It was probably a pulled hamstring, but my lower back was hurting. Back then, I had no medical insurance. If you don't know what's hurting you, you got to just listen into your body at that point. Yeah. So that was the end of my wrestling.
Wow. So you do stuff refereeing and wrestling. Whose ideas for you to decide to manage originally?
That is another thing that I never intended to do.
Yeah.
My heart was set on wrestling. Um, I was doing a managing or a referee thing for CZW, and that was turned into like a gimmicky referee. I was the heel referee for a group with Nick Burke and
Do
Trent
you still have the
Acid.
shirt that you colored and made?
I do have it
Okay.
somewhere, yes.
Nice.
And I have a chair too, because we all had a signature chairs, the softcore connection,
Wow.
different colors, and mine was white with black stripes on it.
Nice.
But yeah, I was doing like a heel referee for the group, and then it was Johnny Cashmere was the one who proposed the idea. He and Trent were both wrestling singles in CZW at the time. They had been doing the Backseat Boyz for a brief while on the outside, and they were going to do the Backseat Boyz in CZW, and they had Donnie B as their manager. Donnie B, for whatever reason, he didn't gel, I guess, with Zandig. I mean, he was
Okay.
a promoter of another promotion for one.
Yeah.
Zandig wasn't the most diplomatic guy in the
Yeah.
world. You know, a lot of people he was a nice guy, he was a great guy, but he could rub a lot of people the wrong way. For whatever reason, I don't know what Donnie B's, but he had no interest in CZW.
Yeah.
So basically, Johnny says, "We want you to be our agent. We want you to fill his role in CZW." This is we got an idea. We're gonna dress you up in a suit jacket and the glasses. At the time, I had long hair and a goatee. He says, "All right." It's like, and says he said this will just transition for you from a referee to a wrestler. That was the intended thing. In the middle of that time, that's when I hurt myself.
Okay.
So if he hadn't done that, I probably never would have. That would probably would have been the end of wrestling business for me. It just turned
Wow.
out that I was managing at the time, and slowly I started to enjoy it, and I started to, that just became my thing. And if it hadn't been for Johnny asking me to do that, I probably would not be in wrestling right now. Yeah. So
Wow. You talk about Johnny mentioned one thing. He mentioned a blazer. So I'm curious originally, what is the idea when you're going for the suit or wherever at first? And walk me through picking this iconic blazer because I was watching the speech the other day from GCW. I had goosebumps. I forgot. You didn't say a number, but how many people bled on that blazer? Like that's iconic.
yeah, that's yeah, I like I said, Johnny said, pick up a suit,
Yeah.
we're gonna do that. I think it was Big Mac Smack. He was like, dude, rip off the colors of the Mountain Dew can. You'll be the Dew. All right. So I went for lime green.
Hmm.
I searched some mall in South Jersey. I found a place that was crazily enough selling lime green suits. I picked one up. I got it airbrushed. Your cheesy Jimmy Hart type airbrushing type manager thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's where that started. I remember Johnny found me a spandex green shirt and I wore the shiny vinyl pants, which I'm a little embarrassed about. But yeah, that started with that. And in the beginning, that was I was very like, speck of blood on it. I came right home and I put the peroxide on it, scrubbed it out, took it to I kept it immaculate for a while. And
Yeah.
then eventually, I guess it was after I started managing Nick Gage and Any Hatred. And I started collecting, it started getting dirtier and dirtier each show, and it started wearing and tearing. And then I just went with it after that. Like I said, I ain't gonna clean it anymore. And I've done so many little gimmicks that nobody ever realized. Like I did it for myself. I really wish I did promos on it to like I wanted to be like Dexter who collected samples about all the
Yeah.
people, my guys. So I started taking like every time somebody would bleed, I would I would put something and I would rub it on the jacket.
Wow.
Nobody was really paying attention.
Yeah.
It was like my little thing. So I did that over years, and like I said, I collected so much blood on this jacket. I hope I never, caught for a murder investigation or anything, because but yeah, I think because I never cleaned it, there's probably more blood on that jacket than any object in wrestling. I would think of more people.
I was shocked for Johnny Cashmere's company nowadays that you have a new one I saw.
That was created by John Zandig.
Okay.
I I had no idea. He heard I was working with Johnny again, and he went on his own. He went to a place, got a green jacket, had somebody airbrush it almost identical to the
Wow.
original one, and he just came to a show and handed it to me one night. And I was so like blown away by that and honored that he, after all these years, he still thought about me, and he says, "Oh, you're the top heel, brother. You gotta look good." I was like, "All right," but I had like for the death matches, I had really enjoyed the bloody, like that became my thing. I
Yeah.
was the disheveled death match manager, and I liked having the bloody jacket, and I purposely made my shirt wrinkled and looking disheveled, and I felt that made me a little unique,
Yeah.
pizza cutter instead of a megaphone. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so. But I'm doing the stuff with Johnny lately. I've been doing stuff with JP Grayson, and I assume with his partner too. He's injured currently, but
Yeah.
that's worked good with the nice new suit and everything.
No. One
So
thing about Dewey Donovan right off the rip, I'm watching old CZWs and I see it. Did Dewey Donovan always have this confidence before wrestling or no?
no, no.
Wow.
I'm a very introverted person,
Wow,
probably.
I would have never guessed that.
I was the type of person that I would go in the locker room and I would sit down and if you started a conversation with me, I liked everybody. I've never met anybody in wrestling that I didn't like.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not outgoing. Yeah. If we talk, we talk. If not, I'm going to sit there and kind of just listen, which is probably better off. When you're new, you're better off just listening to other people and get the lay of everything. You don't want to be talking and then unknowingly upset somebody.
Yeah. How did you get the confidence then? Because when you see you behind the curtain, like it's a completely different person then.
Yeah. Well, now I feel like I go into a just deep into a character right before I walk out there. I don't know. I didn't really have a lot of confidence when I was managing the. Like I said, I didn't have any. CCW was built mostly on young people.
Hmm.
Zande was trying to push young people. He didn't really bring in many veterans to where I could learn from. I learned from the people I worked with who were also they were gaining their experience because a lot of them worked other places. I pretty much stuck with CZW. Um, so I taught myself a lot of stuff as I was going on, mistakes I was making. When I managed the back seats in the beginning, I was pretty much just going out there trying to act cocky and do whatever. I think when I moved on from there, I managed the Briscoe Brothers after that. I started really going into my character and the way I did things. Probably not explaining that well, but
No, yeah.
I started learning a lot better
Okay.
at what I was doing, and I started getting more confidence to where now I feel confident, but then
Wow.
no.
Everyone in wrestling, especially when I do these interviews, talk about back in the day there was that trifecta, the Briscoes, the backseats, the SATs. For you, get to manage a bunch of those. So the backseats, is there a moment? I know that was first for CZW. Is there anything that stands out managing them, or a moment or a match you were part of?
um, no, I liked I mean like the back seats. I was following their lead.
Yeah.
I liked that I was getting involved physically. A couple times we pulled out like the triple super kick thing, and like I said, I was still very much learning at the time with the back seats. Um, we got great matches with Blade and Mondo. Um, it wasn't long after that. I think Johnny left the company for some reason.
Okay.
So we didn't get, it was pretty much from like the summer up until that fall that we were
So how
together
does
in
the
the first
Briscoes
run.
come in?
The Briscoes came in, it was totally random.
Yeah.
Johnny had left the company. Zandig wanted Trent to do singles stuff, and he immediately pulled him away from me with no explanation.
Did he turn him
Uh,
babyface or something, I assume? Or
Trent, yeah, I don't know.
yeah,
The
okay.
lines were so blurred in
Yeah.
CZW at the time.
Yeah.
He was, I know he was in a faction with Zandig. It was the big deals. I can't remember who he brought
Okay.
together, but he wanted Trent doing his own thing because he was really, obviously Trent was amazing at the time,
Yeah.
and he was really big on pushing Trent. So he had him do his own thing, and I guess it was a show in Delaware, and he just said to me that night, he goes, "You're going to manage this team, the Briscoes." And I was like, "All right," and they were so different from now. They just these two baby face teams that you couldn't get more baby face, in their wrestling singlets and everything. And I was like, this makes no sense, like, and I was always big on everything making sense. I hated,
Yeah.
and I went out there, we did the thing, and it didn't, there wasn't really any chemistry at first, but then we started working on a thing where, they were going to be the babyface team, and I was just going to be the Weasley manager that was taking advantage of these young kids. They were super talented at the time. Now, I mean, they were probably 16 or 17
Wow.
when they started there, but they were just amazing, especially when it came to just dropping each other on their heads. And they could, everything they did looked amazing. They were full of energy. It was really an honor to be working with them, and that's when I really developed my character, was working with them, because I was supposed to be angry at them all the time,
Okay.
because they were the baby faces, and that's when I just let my inner self. I think I get frustrated a lot, so I let my inner self out, and I started getting over animated. That's when the facial expressions started to come in,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's
Wow. One thing I gotta ask you off the rip, we're gonna get into a story that I can't wait, but originally prior to this, how does Dewey Donovan go to the high five? Are you managing the Messiah at the time, or how do you get a part of the
no,
high
I
five?
was managing the Hate Club at
Okay.
that point
Oh,
with
okay. Yeah,
Nick
okay.
Gage and Nate Hatred. Uh, I started managing Nick while I was managing the Briscoes.
Okay.
He had he called asked for me. I mean, there wasn't a whole selection of heel managers. So I guess I was by default when somebody wanted to be heel. Even Nick he says like, "Give me Dewey," yeah.
Hmm.
So and that's another like I think about things that define me being in wrestling. If Nick never asked for me to be his manager, I probably wouldn't be here. You
Wow.
know,
Yeah.
because that turned into the hate club thing. That was real big.
Hmm.
When we were in Philadelphia, the hate club started exploding as baby faces. The crowd loved them. Yeah, they still acted like badasses and kicked everybody's ass. But for me, it was just a weird dynamic because they cheered them, but they still wouldn't cheer me.
Hmm.
Like they were still with fuck you, Dewey, blah, blah, blah. And when they one of them would rough me up, they'd all cheer, and but they decided eventually it's like, we gotta get him away from the hate club because they didn't want me there.
Yeah.
So it was one of the shows in Philly. It was Messiah against Nick Gage for the title, and I wound up turning on Nick and went with Messiah.
Hmm.
And then from there, they brought in the Backseat Boys, the team with Messiah.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole high five came from that.
Wow. I'm curious. Walk me through the day prior when you found out Cage of Death 5. I was watching, I forgot, it was a video online the
Jeez.
other day, and people were ranking the Cage of Deaths, and that's still up there. It still holds up. They released it a few years ago, I think it was, but it still holds up.
Yeah, Cage of Death 5, that was scary.
Yeah. Was this your idea?
No,
Okay.
definitely not my idea. I actually was told by somebody, I forget who. Somebody told me they were just trying to rib me in the beginning of the show to see if and then when I actually said I would go along with it, they were like, "Oh yeah, let's do it then."
Wow.
But no, I showed up before the show.
Yep.
Um, and they pull me over and they're like, "Yeah, we got this idea, we wanna." And I know it had to be Johnny's idea because he pitched the idea of him and Lobo doing a double DVD with me at the Sewell place, I believe. We never wound up doing it, but I know I heard him say it before. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm thinking he probably it was probably his idea, but they sold it to me, and at first I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. And then I remember before the show, when I walked into that arena, that setup just was like you were in awe of it, like the cage hanging from the ceiling,
Yeah.
the scaffolding going off across to the cage. Yeah.
Was that a Zandig idea? I assume?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That
Because
was
then there
supposed
was
to
a
be.
separate ring with just like tacks in it, right?
Yes, there was a second ring that supposedly had a million thumbtacks. I don't know if they actually counted, but it was
Yeah.
supposed to be. Um, he had the suspended cage because we had hung him on hooks
Okay.
a month or two before. So it
Okay.
was supposed to be a suspended cage with his retaliation against us. Um, I walked out there and I looked down and I am scared of heights, legit. Like
Okay.
I had never the few high spots we've done, and there's very few that I was in. There's one with Mondo, don't give me an assault driver, and the Briscoes did something to me off the top, and this was just like whoa.
Hmm.
I looked down there, and I wasn't. I thought about it. I contemplated the whole show, and then there's just a part of me that was like, you know what, you always chicken out at the big stuff. Go, just do it, just do it. It was probably the stupidest decision I ever made.
Yeah.
Like I look back and I was like, man, that could have gone so wrong. Luckily, we had Lobo. Lobo, if you can call it experience, he did it. There's enough times to where he would hurt his own body before he would have hurt one of us. He placed us down absolutely perfect. It couldn't have been more perfect. But it's still that
Yeah.
was a lot of body weight to go through a couple tables. We pretty much felt like we just thudded immediately against the floor on that. But I
What's
remember, yeah, I climbed up. I remember climbing up the cage during the match, and at
yeah,
that point, you can't back out after
of
that.
course not.
You
Yeah.
know, I started climbing up, and it's like, man, I don't even know if I can even make it up here. And I climbed. Thankfully, the camera crew didn't film me the entire time because I think I was just like this hanging onto Lobo up there because I was scared of the heights. But
The version
fortunately, it all went well.
CZW has, I was gonna say, something's happened. It's either on the scaffold or in the other ring. So they announced that you're climbing up. Do you go to like try to like punch Lobo, or how do you go up? Or
The whole theory was supposed to be like Johnny was calling me for help. Lobo
okay,
had
okay,
Johnny. He was calling me for help, and I was supposed to be grabbing his arms, and then he yanks me up there. Yeah.
okay.
It was probably more me just timidly trying to climb up there without falling off. Yeah,
Wow.
but yeah, that was the reason I was supposed to be up there. I think during the time I watched it a lot, so
Yeah, me
it was
too.
Gage and I think Trent were doing a thing in the thumbtacks on the other side. So
Yeah.
that's where the camera was, which was good because, like I said, my knees were probably shaking at the time. It looked horrible.
For you, what was like the atmosphere like for that event? Because I remember Zandig comes out, cuts a promo, and you come out with Johnny, and the place is packed. Insane
It was
feeling for that one.
one of the biggest crowds I think we had there. It was electric there, and then like I could hear like after we took our bump, the way the crowd was yelling, and that's just like a rush for me, like that. I was involved in something like that where it got that kind of response.
Yeah. So you do everything with the back seats and the Briscoes, Messiah High Five, and then later on, how does the idea even come up for you with Drew Gulak?
That was long after Nick got locked up.
Okay.
Um, I've retired probably, I mean, at least 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And you don't announce it because if you're an independent wrestling manager, you don't announce your retirement. You just decide that's it.
Yeah.
After the high five, they have put me with Nick Gage and Justice Payne. That was the new version of the Hay Club.
Okay.
During that time, I started missing shows here and there because they didn't really need me.
Okay.
They didn't need, ironically, most of the people I was paired with didn't need a mouthpiece. They were good talkers. At that point, I could add something to their match. My presence, the whole thing could add something to the match, but they didn't particularly need me there. So if I didn't make a show, they were going to go on fine.
Y-
So yeah, I remember I had missed 2 shows that summer because basically sometimes family is more important,
Yeah.
rather than sitting in a wrestling arena on a Saturday night.
Hmm.
They split up, and I came back that show that they were going to fight each other, and I was like, oh, this don't make no sense. Like I haven't been here for 2 shows. Should I even come out with either of you guys? And they're like, nah. So I decided at that point I was going to just stop altogether with
Wow.
wrestling. And then I forget when I got pulled back. That was actually after the whole PW thing. I got brought back as Nick Gage's manager again,
Hmm.
and that was all Brett Lauderdale. He was a referee in
Wow. Yeah. Oh
CZW,
yeah.
and he wasn't involved in the booking at all. He just he messaged me one day. He's like, "Yeah, we're doing the anniversary show. I think it'd be really cool if you came out with Nick Gage again." And he talked it over with Zandig and cleared everything. He's like, "Come on, you're in." Yeah, so I went on doing that. That turned into a long thing with Nick Gage up until he of course, he got locked up.
Hmm.
Everybody knows about that.
Yeah.
And at that point, he was feuding with Drew Gulak at the time. Drew Gulak was doing this whole new, he was just breaking into his whole character. He was doing a heelish thing where he loves the rules and everything. And
Yeah.
when Nick first got caught, he was on Twitter or whatever was popular at the time. He was just going off on him, and people hated it. And then they had the idea, which I was surprised because this is when DJ had the company. I thought when Nick got locked up, that would be the end for me again. Like I didn't think
Wow.
they were going to
Yeah.
bother keeping me around. And they're like, no, 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 no. We want to put you with Drew Gulak. You
Hmm.
come out there and you'll be the turncoat, and that was a scary night for me because the people they legit hated me. I think
Yeah.
for that they hated Drew. Nick was just so over at the time. The Philly people, they loved him.
Yeah.
and they were all behind Nick Gage, and we came out. I came out first, and they were all like, "Yeah, Nick Gage, fucking Gage," And then introduced them to come out, and then here comes Drew Gulak wearing all of his gear because I guess Brett brought all his gear for him to wear. So he was
Yeah.
dressed up exactly like Nick Gage, and he blacked out his tooth, and he was mocking him, and then he had me as his manager, and I could just see the look of rage. It wasn't the same like fuck you, Dewey. This was like we hate you.
Wow.
You're
Yeah.
an, I was nervous.
That's the thing
And,
about CZW. They had the diehards too.
yeah, they yeah, their fans, they were diehard fans, very very critical. They had a lot of things to say about us, but yeah, they were there every time.
How was it making the transition from Nick Gage to Drew Gulak? Obviously, Nick Gage is over in love, and then you go to Drew Gulak, technical and everything, kind of a different ballpark for you. So how was it managing Gulak?
Yeah, he first thing he wanted me to clean up my look. I dropped the dirty jacket.
Yeah.
I started wearing a shirt and tie and looked nice. I love doing it because as much as I love the dynamic with Gage and Nate Hatred, to be a heel manager with baby faces, it's just it's still cool, but it's not what you're meant for. Like
Yeah.
you're not to be with a heel again and to be able to do all the heel manager stuff. I had a lot of fun with that, and Drew is like I say, he was just coming up into his own, uh, and I feel bad that I didn't give him as much as I could have. I was very burnt out at that time from my regular job.
Yeah.
So when he would ask for suggestions, I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna go with your whatever you want to do. Let's do it." I was happy to do whatever he just came up with, but I didn't add a lot of my own ideas to it because I was burnt out. Like I said, I
Wow.
had already retired several times. They just kept bringing me back.
Wow. Especially with Gulak, whose idea was it for the what was it, the combat for a better combat zone or campaign for a better combat?
Campaign for a better combat zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all his idea.
Wow.
I forget who he had. Alexander James,
Hmm.
I think was, and there's another guy, Mr. Tofinga.
Okay.
Kimberly, yeah, that was the
Yeah.
other girl. Yeah. And he was just basically he wanted to do a faction, a heel faction, and he had his whole thing was to clean up the combat zone, that's get rid of the death matches and the rule breakers, and
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's we did that up until Drew started progressing beyond combat zone. He was getting into his own. He was becoming a great singles wrestler. He started working Evolve and some other places, and it was no surprise to me that he got picked up.
Nice.
Eventually.
So after Gulak, do you retire again?
Uh, yeah, I would say so. I did. They had me with Alexander James, and
Yep.
he had the rep. They were just starting, and the rep. So I don't think they really wrestled yet. They were just being bodyguards.
Hmm.
So I was with them. That went for maybe a few months, and then I got phased out completely at that point. I think it was because whoever was helping with the booking stuff, I think it was Rob Dimension at the time at CZW. This was all during DJ's era, so I mean, he had left for some reason, and DJ had always says, "Oh yeah, we're gonna bring you back to do this or do this," and it just never happened. So
Wow.
yeah, I stopped at that point. I stopped for a while.
Yeah, you stopped for a while, but I remember you said originally Brett messaged you. How does this idea all these years later to come back happen?
I I think Brett likes me for some reason. I don't know
Ye-
why. I don't know what it is about my work, and especially since he took a thumbtack bat to the head twice because of me. So I
Wow.
don't know why
Yeah.
he's high on me, but yeah, he when Nick was about to get out of jail, I remember he called me. It's just like, hey, we're all meeting down in South Jersey. Welcome home party for Nick, basically. I went down there, and I don't think Brett quite had the idea for GCW yet. I think at that point he was because yeah, Nick was still focused on the CZW return at that
Okay.
point. Um, So yeah, but it was Brett that kind of called me down there. I wasn't really officially booked for CZW. When I got out, when Nick got out, he came up to me. He says, "Dewey, anywhere I am and you're at, you're on with me. I don't
Wow.
care where it's at." And when I was still hanging out at CCW shows, just hanging out there before the show, talk to people, friends, whatever. And when he went there for the CZW return, I wasn't even booked. He just looked over at DJ. He goes, "Dewey's with me." Yeah. And then DJ's like, "Oh yeah, 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 of course, of course, of course." Because at that time, Nick was so hot. He looked like a
Yeah.
$1 million. Came out of prison. He was chiseled. Every company wanted him at the time. Uh, he could just make his own rules at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he got me back in CZW.
How is it just managing Nick Gage in general? Because like you talk about, you manage all these guys. You stepped away originally from Nick Gage originally because there were two baby faces and you were the heel, but Nick Gage is loved everywhere.
Yeah, now it's different because I guess there's like a notoriety of me being his manager.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie, I like he gets all the energy and I get to feed off of that energy.
Yeah.
They're not cheering for me, but it's nice to kind of pretend, you're out there. Uh, yeah, it's a weird dynamic, and it just seems to work. I just seem like this demented old man who's still Weasley. I'm
Yeah.
still using him for my whatever my financial gain or however that's supposed to be work. But and he still would physically assault me at times, because he's Nick Gage.
Yeah.
But for some reason it works, and I oddly get cheered sometimes, at the shows and we in GCW, and I still get the bad, like the Dewey fucks pigs chance.
Yeah.
Yes. But they love Nick, but they're okay with hating me and me being us being together. I don't understand it, but it works.
Is there a
I love it.
I was gonna say, is there a favorite moment or match? Because there are so many with you and Nick Gage that stand out.
And I love doing all the stuff with Cardona.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun, especially the wedding. He did a mock
Yeah.
reenactment of his wedding with his legitimate parents there and everything, and that was a whole lot of fun because they just the whole planning of all that and what we did. I loved what was it was the feud with RSP, Ricky Shane Page.
Yeah.
Because the crowd was so angry. I remember the stuff being thrown in the ring when Ricky Shane Page beat him. Nick was
Wow.
always trying to people over. He didn't care if it was Cardona, Ricky Shane Page. The match with Moxley at the Showboat with and Mick Foley was there, and that was a big thing. And of course, the Hammerstein. That was probably my biggest show.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was something I could have closed my career out on right there, just doing the Hammerstein and the huge crowd and the history that was there. Those are some of
Is
the things that stand out.
I was gonna say, is Hammerstein your favorite venue performed in? Because CZW and there's been places for even PWU that was still nice for wrestling.
Yeah, I think just for the history of the building of the ECW arena, that was what I was the hugest fan of was ECW, and
Yeah.
to still work there and still do the same types of crowds and everything. That was a great place. As an old man, I like the Showboat. I like Atlantic City. I like the idea of doing the show and then going up to my room, taking a shower, and laying down.
Wow.
So I do love the Showboat. I love Atlantic City. That's where I primarily do most of my shows. Where I don't go much further, than this little area. But yeah, the Hammerstein was amazing. That was fun. Um, and I mean, like I said, the ECW arena is probably the go-to place where everybody would like to work just for the history of it.
Yeah. How was your experience for the 2022 Deathmatch Hall of Fame originally?
That was I didn't think it was deserved.
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a deathmatch worker. I was honored that I
Yeah.
was offered. Hall of Fames. They're not really a Hall of Fame. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody has a Hall of Fame now. I saw online, a backyard federation, and they had Hall of Fame inductions. It really doesn't mean anything. There's
Yeah.
no physical Hall of Fame. It does. Uh, the thing that meant something to me is the people that were inducted before in this. They
Yeah.
were all people I worked with, people I respected, um, people that I cared about. They were good people I respected in the business. People that were good friends. Um, so for somebody, whoever it was, whether it was Brett or a collection of people, for them to say, "Hey, we think of you in the same category as this other group of people," and for the fans to not shit on that and say, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah," and they were supportive of it, that meant something to me.
Yeah.
The fact that people think, okay, we think of you like these guys that you respect. So that meant a lot to me. So it did mean a lot to me, not so much the fact that it's a Hall of Fame, because like I said, they're not really a Hall of Fame, but
GCW had a good turnout for that one. Even your year, like wife beater, like that was the last time anyone has heard from him in wrestling too. Like
yeah,
that was stacked that year. I remember too Messiah. He was busy. He was telling me he was supposed to be in that year too.
yeah, yeah, Wife Beater. That was the first time I'd seen him in a very long time.
Wow.
He looked great. I met his actual wife, which was ironic.
Yeah.
The wife beater.
Yeah.
We talked about that. It was crazy because he had two sons that were bigger than him.
Wow.
So I'm like, wow, it's been a long time. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was great to see the wife beater that night, and
Hmm.
I think I saw Nick Mondo. That was good to see Nick Mondo. I saw the Briscoe brothers for the last time around that time.
Wow.
That was great to see them. Because Jay and Mark, they had their whole the Mama and Papa Briscoe, along with Mark and Jay, and then a slew of children. I can't even count how many children they each have. Yeah, and then their wives. It was the whole Briscoe family, and we had one things I liked about the Showboat. It was more than just a wrestling show because you're there at the hotel. It gives you a chance to mingle with people, whether it's the fans or workers.
Hmm.
So just to have a time to chat with the Briscoes and catch up on them, and they were super nice. They didn't forget me or nothing. Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
So it was great to see them again all together like that. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of people I've seen there, like B Boy, just a lot of people you connect with while you're there, just hanging out. So I like that.
Yeah. So 2022, you received that Hall of Fame. You do everything in GCW. Do you retire again, or are you still doing stuff for GCW when Cashmere brings you in for his new company at first?
I still work with GCW.
Okay.
I like I said, Nick does not need me. He likes having me there.
Yeah.
I'm good for him to set up the chairs for his big deathmatch chair pyramids.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like I add something to his presentation just because that's what like a manager does. He's to boost up the person he's with. Even far as selling everything on the outside of the ring, you're not the focal point, but you're out there and your reactions, your selling, it's all adding to the whole overall presentation.
Yeah.
Nick loves having me with him. I like doing that. Unfortunately, I can't be there full time, and at that point, I was taking care of my father, who was with dementia and ailing. So for about 5 years, from 2020 on, I was very limited on what I could do. And Brett was traveling all over the country. I would have loved to have done stuff like that, but I couldn't. So Nick never needed me there. So when he was doing a lot of shows, he'd go on his own and he would be just fine. And when they were local, that's when I would show up and go out there with Nick. And basically when Nick started having issues and he stopped doing shows, that's when I stopped doing shows. So basically, yeah, that's where my GCW career is. It's all solely dependent on whether Nick is, and it's not that Brett wouldn't put me with somebody else, but when you're running around the country, why are you going to put a manager with somebody who can only be there in New Jersey?
Yeah.
It makes no sense, and I understand that. So
GCW ends, and then was it easy for you to come back when Cashmere asked you?
yeah, I mean, I think it was still going on at the
Okay.
time. Johnny, he decided he was going to do the new Backseat Boys with
Yeah.
Graysons. He initially he messaged me early on when he first was going to do it. And he's like, "Dude, I got an idea. I'd like you to come back and manage them." And I forget, it was somewhere. It was either New York or real up in North Jersey. It was a bit of a drive for me.
Hmm.
And like I said, this was at a time when I couldn't get away from my house very often. and I just couldn't make it for that one, which I would have liked to. I think it was the SATs show that they
Okay.
were going to be on, and I would have loved to have done it, but I couldn't. And that was the end of that for a while. He started managing himself, I think,
Hmm.
and then he started working in Burlington, which is a lot closer to where I am. And he asked me again, so you want to come down? We'd like you to do some stuff with the. And the first when I went there, first thing he did is had me turn on him.
Yeah. Were you with
We
the
were
rep at first?
Yeah, I managed the new back seats the first time, and then he had me turn on them. And it was the whole concept of that run was I was supposed to hate Johnny Cashmere
Okay.
for all the past whatever. We made up stuff that I hate him for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I wound up turning on them. I managed to rep. Um,
Shannon Decker?
yes, I was just trying to think of his name, but
Yeah.
him. And yeah, we started like a little group, and we had all the belts, and then I forget what happened. That just ended. I don't know what. I know he did some shows in Philadelphia that I couldn't make at the
Okay.
Harris Casino, and I couldn't make those. But then once I heard, they all lost their belts, and I wasn't involved with either any of them anymore. So that was that. Again, like I said, I never. I'm just happy to do whatever somebody wants me to do. I don't go out looking for work anymore. It's just, I'm thinking beyond that. But
Yeah.
then he just asked me recently, even more recently. He's like, "Yeah, come back because they're heels now, the new backseats. Why don't you put you with them again?" So I've been doing that. And that's been a lot of fun. They're very talented. The new, especially JP. I haven't worked a lot with Tommy because he's been injured. But
Hmm.
JP's a very talented kid. Looks
Yeah.
great. So yeah, we're having fun with that right now.
Nice. Originally, you talked about when you first started training that a lot of the learning you were doing were just by managing and learning from other people. For you, when you look at your career, who are your biggest mentors when it came to wrestling?
Like I said, that's like I said, there weren't so much mentors as people
Yeah.
I've patterned myself after, kind of.
Yeah.
Not pattern, I shouldn't say, but I pick up little things
Little things. Yeah.
that they do, and it's an odd mix because, of course, Jimmy Hart was a big influence in that aspect, to where just the way he moved around, bounced around the ring all the time, and I always loved that. Um, I modeled a lot of stuff after Tammy Sitch, just
Wow.
the way she sold stuff outside the ring, like when somebody would duck a clothesline, she would duck down. She would big move, she would spin around. And I picked up on a lot. And when I was younger and more energetic, I did a lot of my managing like that.
Hmm.
Like I sold every move, jumped up and down, spun around, ducked. Oh my god! Oh my, I was very animated with all that stuff. So that, and of course, being ugly, I think, my facial expressions, I mixed a lot of Paul Bear unintentionally
Okay.
into stuff. I wasn't trying to be like that, but a lot of people say like, yeah, you're kind of acting like Paul Bear
Wow.
there.
If someone was to ask you, is there a match that you would say defines Dewey Donovan's career managing in general?
I have to say Cage of Death 5.
Yeah.
That was when I actually did something big. Probably the only time I did something big that was remembered.
Yeah.
Uh, it's kind of nice that there's a YouTube clip floating around and people still watch it and still remember it. Uh, it's crazy because most of the people that are fans now weren't even born. I was started in CZW, so there's the fact that anybody remembers me is like the fact that you remember me and want to do an interview with me. That's an honor to me.
No, it's a complete honor to
Somebody
me. Like,
still remembers what I did back then. Yeah.
I'm in college, and half the time, instead of like paying attention to college classes, I was watching CZW and things like that. So the fact you made this happen, thank you so much.
Oh no, no. Hey, you're very welcome.
Especially going to the new year. I know you're doing stuff with JP now. Is there anything you want to do with wrestling, or you're just still having fun doing stuff with Johnny's company? Anything else?
I'm happy with this right now. I like
Nice.
what we're doing. I don't know Nick Gage's status. I
Yeah.
know he looks really good now.
Yeah.
I've seen that. I
Awesome.
don't know if he's coming back to wrestling or not. If he does, I would love to do another run with Nick because that was just that I don't know. For some reason, our cohesion together, I love just doing that. I like to be in the crazy deathmatch manager that leads him around.
Yeah.
So I would love to do that, but like I said, I honestly don't know where his future lies. He's got to worry about his health. He can't be worrying about wrestling anymore.
Yeah. Well, Dewey, I can't thank you enough for doing this. Over a year in the making. However, every interview I've done has ended the same. The day you decide it's all done in wrestling, which you've retired a bunch of times, but it doesn't really happen. The day you decide it's all done, what do you want Dewey Donovan's legacy in pro wrestling to be?
Oh, legacy. I don't know. I think any manager, their job is to put over whoever they're with.
Yeah.
They're to better that person. They're supposed to make that person seem credible, fill in their shortcomings, whether it's through talking or whatever it is. You're supposed to make them better. And I hope the people that I worked with, whether it's the Backseats, the Briscoes, Messiah, any of them, I hope I elevated them, that I didn't disappoint them. That's what I hope.
Nice. Well, Dewey, thank you so much. Truly, over here in the making, and believe me, it was worth it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be on here.
Thank you, Dewey, for doing this, and thank everybody for watching this episode. This was Best for Business.
Thank you for watching this episode of Best for Business. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, because this is Best for Business.